A thin layer of sea mist clung to the air as the carnival lights flickered on. Towering rides gleamed against the dusk sky, while calliope music echoed along the waterfront. Families strolled through the gates, drawn by the swirl of bright colours and mouth-watering scents of funnel cakes and cotton candy. In the distance, the bay's dark waters rippled beneath a sliver of a moon, and something about the reflection on the waves felt heavier than usual. Like many city dwellers with a taste for the extraordinary, I was drawn to this carnival's promise of thrills, illusions, and fleeting magic. Yet, behind the painted smiles and dazzling neon lights, a presence stirred. It was as though the crisp night air whispered hints of a hidden world beckoning me closer. When I entered through the wooden archway, I was greeted by a rush of sensations. Children's laughter, the tang of salted popcorn, and the excited chatter of endless possibility. My feet carried me down the winding path of games and attractions, past rickety booths with stuffed animals wafting in a breeze that came off the water. A fortune-teller's stall caught my eye, her facade decorated with glittering stars and faded tarot images. She wore a thick shawl draped over her shoulders, peering out from under a dark veil. Her gaze met mine for just a moment, and her expression turned strangely sorrowful. I paused, feeling compelled to approach, but she withdrew into her booth with a gentle shake of her head, as if to warn me of dangers unseen. Amid the swirling crowds, I spotted my friend Bree. Her magenta-dyed hair made her easy to pick out in any gathering, and she waved vigorously when she saw me. "You made it!" she exclaimed, weaving through the throng. "Isn't it enchanting?" She tugged on my sleeve, too excited to keep still. Bree was always on the lookout for supernatural rumors, ghost stories, or supernatural phenomena to chase. She had heard from a local fisherman that this carnival only appeared once every few years, an event whispered about in maritime bars and seaside taverns. "Absolutely," I said, taking in the swirling rides and colour. "Any leads on the weird stuff you mentioned?" Bree flicked her gaze over my shoulder. "Actually, yeah. The fisherman told me something about a haunted ride, some old spinner, or tilt-a-whirl, where people can see faces in the mirrors or shadows that don't belong there. He said last time the carnival was in town, 2 people disappeared." I tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "Urban legend, right?" Bree smirked. "Maybe, but let's check it out." As we ventured deeper, the carnival grew more labyrinthine. Paths that should have looped back seemed to stretch out farther, rides seemed to shift positions, and the entire layout felt subtly different than it appeared at first glance. Wandering attractions dotted the walkways, stilt walkers, jugglers throwing fiery torches, and silent clowns wearing elaborate masks. I couldn't pinpoint when exactly the mood began to change, but somewhere along the snaking passages, the air grew colder and the music took on an eerie undertone. The laughter around us felt distant, as though we had slipped into another reality cut off from the rest of the city. We first tried to find the ride Bree had mentioned, the tilt-a-whirl, rumoured to be haunted. Streams of people hurried past, but no matter whom we asked for directions, descriptions changed, or the next booth worker would point us in contradicting directions. One suggested it was near the Ferris wheel, and another insisted it was by the carousel. After nearly half an hour of restless searching, we stumbled across it, as if it had appeared out of thin air. The ride was set off on its own, near the edge of the pier, where salty breezes rustled tattered flags overhead. A flickering sign read, "Midnight Roundup." Despite the name, the ride looked more like a whirling contraption of striped pods attached to a central pivot. Its metal frame gleamed with chipped paint that revealed the rust beneath, reminding me of something pulled from the depths of the bay. A single operator stood by the gate. An older man, dressed in a brocade vest that might have once been gold but was now dulled to a faint brass colour. His eyes were vacant and distant. "Is this open?" Bree asked, stepping under the ride's arch. He gave a curt nod and waved us forward. Only a handful of other riders settled themselves into pods, each with blank expressions or uneasy frowns. I felt a shrill breeze pass over my shoulders as we climbed into one of the worn seats. The operator pressed a switch and the contraption lurched forward. The pod spun around in slow circles at first, then gained speed until the surrounding Carnival lights blurred into streaks of neon colour. While we spun, I felt a churning in my stomach, unrelated to the spinning of the ride. The reflection on the metal interior of our pod seemed distorted. Bree shouted something, but the wind whipped her voice away. I glanced to the seat across from me. No one was there, but I saw a flicker of a shape in the metal's reflection. A human form, hunched and whispering, though no words reached my ears. Before I could gather my wits, the ride jerked to a stop. When the brake released, gravity lurched me forward and my eyes closed for an instant. When I opened them, I wasn't in the pod anymore. Instead, I found myself standing in a dark corridor, the walls made of some grimy, dripping material more akin to the underbelly of a ship than any carnival ride. A clammy, suffocating air enclosed me. I blinked hard, but the darkness remained absolute, save for a faint purple glow at the end of the passage. My heart hammered. I called out for Bree, my own voice echoing back to me. With cautious steps, I followed the glow, feeling my way along slimy walls. Each step seemed to echo from an impossible distance, as if I were walking in circles within a realm that defied sense. Then, unexpectedly, the purple glow expanded like a door opening. Figures writhed inside, flickering shadows, twisting silhouettes trapped in what looked like a mirrored hall. Their eyes glowed red, and they reached out with hands that fused momentarily to the shining surface. I tried to back away, but the corridor behind me closed with a metallic groan, forcing me forward. Low whispers of "Help us" slid beneath my consciousness, spiking terror in my veins. Somewhere in that hall of shadows, an entity floated into view. Unlike the other silhouettes, this one held its form more distinctly, a robed figure with a face of swirling darkness. It extended an arm in my direction, and the swirling pattern on its sleeve shimmered. I felt a compelling tug that threatened to drag me into that shadow realm, as though an invisible chain bound my chest. I gasped, forcing myself to steady my breath. I thought of Bree, of how we had come into this together. I stilled my panic and fought against the cloying tightness that tried to claim me. The figure opened what might have been a mouth, a vacant, infernal gap that seemed to devour light. Its voice thundered in my mind. "Your fear opens the portal," it said. "Feed your terror, so we may feed." Pain flared in my temples, my vision blurred, and I sank to my knees. Just as I felt consciousness slipping, I heard a crackling sound like static tearing across the walls. A shimmer of light cut through the corridor. The looming entity hissed, recoiling as though lashed by a flaming whip. Its form quivered, then flickered out of existence. My eyes stung, trying to adjust. Suddenly, I was back in the seat of the tilt-a-whirl ride, panting as though I'd run a marathon. The other riders seemed dazed, but their eyes were open, their faces pale. Bree was slumped by my side, her knuckles white from clutching the safety bar. The air smelt of burnt wood, and a faint haze of black smoke hovered around the ride operator, who stared at us with an unspoken warning. "Exit," he said. His voice cracked with a grave seriousness. No carnival cheer, no manufactured smile. Just one word, uttered with finality. Bree and I stumbled off the ride. For a moment, neither of us spoke, overwhelmed by the sense that we had kept one foot in reality while another had stepped into a place of torment and nightmares. "Did you see?" she finally began, her voice trembling. "Something," I replied, swallowing hard. "I don't know how to describe it. That place. It felt like we were trapped." A wave of dizziness hit, and I leaned against a nearby post. Bree's eyes shone. "We can't leave now," she insisted. Despite her fear, resolute determination burned in her expression. "Something's wrong here. We have to figure out what's happening and maybe how to stop it." "Stop it?" I repeated softly. still shaken. But my curiosity and moral sense tugged at me. We couldn't just abandon these people if their souls were at risk. The carnival itself seemed like a labyrinth that concealed an evil force. If that force was turning rides into portals, who knew how many victims had been taken? We decided to search for clues around the carnival's perimeter, a place less crowded, where we could gather our thoughts. There, the lights were sparser, the music more subdued. The dull roar of the ocean melded with the faint hum of the generators powering the rides. The tide sloshed against wooden pilings, and I inhaled the briny sting of the sea. My gut twisted when I spotted a figure kneeling in the shadows. It was the fortune teller I had seen earlier. Her shawl was drawn tight around her shoulders, and she lifted her face toward the carnival grounds, as if in silent prayer or supplication. He approached cautiously, uncertain whether she would vanish again. She looked up, and her eyes widened in recognition. "You've seen them, haven't you?" she asked, voice hushed. Bree and I exchanged glances. "Seen what?" Bree asked. The fortune teller sighed, her breath shuddering in the cool night air. "The ones who lurk between, the spirits or demons that traverse the boundary of this world and the next. They slip into carnival rides, using them as thresholds to snare souls." She blinked rapidly, as though fighting tears. "I'm sorry, I couldn't stop you before you boarded that ride." I knelt beside her. "What do they want?" She fixed me with a sorrowful stare. "They feed on fear, on the darkness in human hearts. The carnival is a perfect hunting ground. So many people seeking thrills or distractions, their guards lowered. Once terror cracks the veneer of fun, the spirits can slip in and open portals." Bree leaned closer. "Have they done this before?" With a grim nod, the fortune teller explained that the carnival had existed for decades, inherited by various owners who, unknowingly or knowingly, allowed these spirits to fester. Each location the carnival visited left behind stories of vanishings or accidents too strange to be explained. She herself had foreseen these events in her readings and joined the carnival to try and mitigate the damage, but the malevolent forces always found a way to slip through. She rose slowly. "If you truly want to help, there is a place you must go. The Hall of Mirrors. Near the center, that is where the boundary is thinnest, where the last stand must be made." She cautioned us. "But it won't be simple. They have countless ways of ensnaring minds." We left her with a nod of thanks. The idea of heading toward the carnival's core to a place intentionally designed to distort perception terrified me. Yet some intangible force urged us onward. Perhaps it was defiance, or a sense of duty to prevent further harm. We snaked through a labyrinth of booths, weaving past unsuspecting fairgoers who squealed with delight at ring tosses or cheap illusions. Now that we knew the hidden truth, each laugh or cheerful scream sounded like a moment of vulnerability. The carnival puppeteers behind the scenes, whether mortal or spectral, must have been reveling in this bubble of naive joy. Near the center, an imposing structure rose. It didn't look like the whimsical Hall of Mirrors from travelling fairs I remembered. The sign overhead was scrawled in ornate script, but letters glowed crimson, as if outlined in embers. The facade was carved with monstrous faces and swirling patterns that seemed to shift in the periphery of vision. A single entrance yawned open, dark as a cave. Overhead, storm clouds roiled. Lightning forked in the distance, illuminating the carnival's silhouette on the bay. Bree and I exchanged a single glance, fear mirrored in each other's eyes, before stepping inside. The temperature plummeted. Our reflection in the initial hallway was oddly stretched, then compressed, morphing into grotesque distortions. Bree's eyes became larger saucers in one mirror. In another reflection, my body twisted sideways like a reflection in rippling water. Overlapping music and disembodied laughter echoed, each step deeper, forging confusion, as though the walls themselves led us astray. We navigated the narrow corridors with caution, touching the glass to confirm what was real and what was illusion. Within minutes, the hallway branched into multiple choices, each flanked by mirrored walls that flickered with what looked like moving shadows behind the surface. We tried to stick together, but a sudden flash of swirling light erupted from the floor, blinding me. When my vision cleared, Bree was gone. My stomach lurched in panic. I called her name, my voice bouncing off the glass, returning in warped echoes. Everything felt more claustrophobic now, stifling as if the oxygen were thin. Pressing a palm against mirror after mirror, I soon found a corridor that seemed different. Each reflective surface was tinted a deep purple, reminding me of the corridor from my tilt-a-whirl vision. Down the center of this corridor, motes of light drifted like fireflies, leading me forward. At the end stood a triangular arch made of hammered metal. Slowly, it opened like a set of moving jaws. Within, swirling blackness pulsed with faint red sparks. A hand reached out. Breeze. She was trapped on the other side of the barrier, fingers extended, calling for me, though her voice was lost in the black swirl. My heart thundered. I reached out, forcing my arm through the barrier's cold and viscous surface. My hand connected with hers, but at that moment, icy pain stabbed through my body. It felt like razor-sharp nails raking across my soul. A voice thundered through my mind, the same voice from the tilt-a-whirl dimension. You cannot save her. Fear is the key, and your terror feeds us. The swirl of blackness coalesced into the robed figure from before, its face a vortical emptiness. Bree's figure flickered, trapped in the entity's grip like a living puppet. Lightning-lit images flashed around me, revealing tortured faces pressing against mirrors, each an imprisoned soul trying to escape. My resolve jolted. I would not let this monster claim Bree, nor anyone else. Fighting the numbness creeping into my arms, I pushed further into the black swirl, letting the agony fuel me. The fear in my heart was replaced by defiance. The robed figure hissed as cracks of light appeared in the black swirl. In that moment, I recalled the fortune-teller's warning that the spirits fed on fear, but would recoil from unyielding resolve and compassion. Summoning every ounce of willpower, I latched onto Bree's hand, envisioning the times we shared. Our laughter, our silly escapades, our unwavering loyalty. As though responding to my determination, a fissure of silver lightning split the swirling darkness. The figure recoiled, letting out an unearthly shriek. We stumbled backward onto solid ground. The swirling blackness sealed itself behind us, the edges collapsing inwards until it popped out of existence like a candle snuffed by the wind. Panting, I turned to Bree. Her face looked drawn and pale, yet relief glimmered in her eyes. "Thank you," she managed. We found ourselves in a central chamber of the Hall of Mirrors. The corridor behind us had vanished, replaced by a small circular room ringed with floor-to-ceiling glass panels. Each mirror reflected shifting images of carnival rides. In one, the Ferris wheel spun lonely and silent under a blood-red moon. In another, the roller coaster soared through flames. A third mirror displayed a swirl of tortured figures trapped in a spinning vortex. The illusions, or visions, gave us glimpses of other realms infected by these malevolent spirits. Bree and I approached a massive mirror at the far side of the chamber. This panel was different, cracked and riddled with dark stains as though from old blood. I sensed this was the crux of the entire cursed carnival. A swirl of ghostly shapes moved through the crack, and faint moans whispered through the air. We pressed our hands against the glass carefully. The surface was cold, but vibrated with a quiet hum, as if an entire world lay just beyond. Shadows in the reflection parted, revealing the robed figure once more, its eyes burning red as infernos. An echo of its previous words resounded in my head. Fear is the key. I could feel the entity straining to break free, perhaps attempting to fuse our dimension with its own. If it succeeded, more portals would open, drawing countless souls into permanent entrapment. Bree cradled a small silver locket she wore around her neck, a keepsake from her grandmother, who believed in protective charms. She pressed the locket to the mirror's surface. Soft radiance spread from the silver, forming a luminous pattern against the glass. The shadows flickered like creatures caught in a windstorm, swirling violently. "Focus!" Bree cried, pushing the locket against the mirror until her knuckles whitened. She glanced at me, her eyes filled with desperation. "Add your will to mine." Without hesitating, I pressed a palm over hers. The carnival's distant music warped into a jarring cacophony, yet a steady hum of light emanated from our hands, pulsing like a heartbeat. In the reflection, the robed figure writhed as golden cracks spread across its silhouette. Through the corners of my vision, I saw other spirits stirring in the mirrors, their ghostly arms pounding on the glass. Some had eyes filled with malice, others with anguish. The pain was immense, a sensation of tug-of-war over our very souls. Still we pushed. Soon, a thunderclap shattered the tension. The mirror in front of us splintered with a deafening crash, shards cascading around our feet. The robed figure let out a wail that vibrated through my bones. The darkness receded, leaving behind a swirling rush of pale luminescence. For a fleeting moment, I saw countless ghostly faces drifting free. Their expressions were a mixture of relief and stunned wonder. They floated upward, dissolving into soft sparks that winked out one by one, like stars on a clear night. An immediate hush fell, as though the energy drained from the Hall of Mirrors. The oppressive cold lifted, and the carnival's normal lights flickered back to a steady glow. It was over. Bree and I exchanged a disbelieving look, gratitude overwhelming us. Adrenaline still coursed through my veins, yet the sense of dread that had clung to every corner of the carnival was fading. We stumbled out of the Hall of Mirrors, the labyrinth seemingly reverting to a mundane maze of reflective surfaces. When we emerged into the open air, the entire carnival had shifted. People ambled about in renewed cheer, their eyes no longer clouded by that subtle, lurking dread. The rides glinted beneath the moonlight with a new innocence. A faint pink hue tinged the sky. Dawn was approaching. Near the exit, we saw the fortune teller once more. She watched us from under her shawl, her lips curved into a weary smile. "You broke their hold here," she said softly. "At least for now. Thank you." Bree nodded, letting out a shaky breath. "We couldn't let them trap more souls," she hesitated. "Will they return?" The fortune teller inclined her head. "They always probe for fear. But you have weakened them considerably this night. Those spirits will need time to rebuild their strength, and the carnival's owners will sense that something has changed. Perhaps in the next place they travel, the malevolent ones won't be able to slip in so easily." She cast her gaze out over the calm water. "Evil never disappears entirely, but each victory is worth fighting for," I questioned quietly. "What about the souls that were already taken?" A gentle sadness flickered over the fortune teller's features. "Not all can be recovered. Some were claimed in years past, but many were released tonight. Their freedom is a blessing." We stood by the water's edge as the first rays of sunrise tinted the horizon with soft rose and amber. The carnival lights began to sputter and dim, no longer needed in the daylight's approach. Booths closed, rides slowed, workers who had been oblivious to the supernatural threat began packing up. It was as though the entire operation was winding down in a rush, eager to depart under the protective shield of day. Bree and I walked the boardwalk in awed silence, absorbing the surreal transition from the horror we had experienced to a normal morning by the bay. Seagulls squawked overhead, drawn by the fishing boat's return. A few carnival staffers glanced our way as though sensing that something monumental had transpired but lacking the context to understand. We could feel that the portals had closed, and the trapped spirits were, for the moment, free. We turned back one last time as we reached the wooden archway to leave. Beneath the slowly brightening sky, the carnival grounds flickered. Structures quivered at the edges of sight, and the entire carnival seemed to shimmer, as if on the verge of disappearing. Perhaps it would vanish again, taking with it any lingering residue of the corruption, and hopefully leaving behind fewer shadows for the malevolent spirits to inhabit in the future. In that final glance, the ride operator of the midnight roundup stood near the entrance, his gaze subdued. He lifted a hand in what might have been a silent farewell, or perhaps gratitude, or maybe just acknowledgement of a truth we now shared, of the dark power that had lurked here, and how precarious the balance between worlds could be. I placed a hand on Bree's shoulder, both of us worn from the ordeal, yet holding on to a strong sense of purpose. The carnival might move on, but we knew it wasn't the end of the story. One day, those nightmares might gather strength again. Other doorways could open in a different city, a different carnival, or another unsuspecting place. But we had learned that courage and unity could turn fear's power against evil. We left footprints in the sand along the bay, the carnival now behind us in the growing daylight. A gust from the sea hit our backs, carrying the faint echoes of carnival music, happier now, almost carefree. As we looked ahead, the city skyline rose against the morning sun. People bustled about, oblivious to the cosmic struggle that had transpired under cover of night. Bree wiped away a stray tear, and I breathed in the salt-tinged air. Together we walked on, hearts tinged with sorrow for the lost souls, but fortified by relief for those we had helped set free. The waterfront would return to normal in a day or two, the swirling rumours fading into the background of everyday life. Locals would spin tall tales of ephemeral lights on the bay, of strange illusions glimpsed from the Ferris wheel, or of friends who would mysteriously disappear. With the carnival's departure, the city might remember it as just another travelling fair, entertaining and then gone too soon. But Bree and I would always know that behind the glittering lights, a darker reality had lurked. And that, for one night, guided by conviction and fueled by friendship, we had closed a portal of nightmares.